Welcome to Curious Life of a Child-Free Woman, a podcast celebrating unconventional choices and asking curious questions through the lens of a happy, child-free life. Every week, I chat with experts on today's most interesting topics, inspiring us to think differently, live intentionally, and find fulfillment on our terms. Whether you're child-free or seeking a space where parenthood isn't part of the conversation, you are welcome here. It's not about comparison, it's about possibility. Let's get curious together. Have you ever wondered if your approach to finances should be different if you're not planning to have kids, or felt that much of traditional money talk feels irrelevant when your goals don't involve saving for college or passing down an inheritance? Do you ever feel like you're doing fine financially, but are still unsure what you're really working toward or how to make decisions that match your values and the life you actually want? I have had all of these feelings, which is why I'm so excited to chat with today's guest, Bri Conn from Childfree Wealth, where she supports child-free people to simplify their finances, define their own version of success, and build a life that's rich and more than just money. Welcome, Bri.
Thank you so much for having me today, Emily. I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
I am so excited to have you too. Okay, so from the jump, when I hear the phrase child-free wealth, my ears automatically perk up as a child-free person. And I feel like we often are left out of this conversation, or maybe we're just forced kind of by default to use traditional financial information or financial knowledge and kind of bend it to make it work for our lives without it being tailored to the child-free lifestyle. So, can you start by kind of telling us what is child-free wealth as an organization and how you got involved?
Yeah, so I've been with Childfree Wealth now for a little over 2 years now. I met Dr. J in a Facebook group for people who are child free. There were two posts one night. One said, "What do you do now?" And the other one said, "What do you want to do?" And I commented on both of them. I said, "I'm a social media manager. I work in marketing. I want to be a CFP, certified financial planner." He saw both those comments and said, "I'm a CFP. If you have questions, let me know. I'm happy to talk to you more about what that looks like. And if you don't want to talk about that, I'd be happy to pass your information on to other people who are looking for marketing help." And so we chatted for, it was a couple times, and then I eventually just said, "Hey, can I have a job?" So very direct, very to the point. And he said, "Let me think about that," because there wasn't a job or a really opportunity there available and public or anything like that. Called me back a few days later, said, "I think we can make this work." And now I've been here for a few years and loving it. But what we really do, and what we've brought on more planners since I joined as well, but we work on building both a life and a financial plan for people who are child free. So you don't have kids, you're not planning on having kids, because life looks very different when you don't follow that standard life script anymore. And much of the traditional financial advice out there is built with the idea that you want to build generational wealth and pass that on. And keep building money, you're gonna pay for college, all of these things, when that doesn't fit many of us.
Mhm. Yes. Tell us more. Well, first of all, congrats on the bold approach to just say, can I work here? That's amazing. And for reference, Dr. J is the founder of Child Free Wealth, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay. I love that a child-free community brought you together and then everything unfolded to where things are now and you're happily working there and spreading the word. So tell us what actually makes financial planning or life planning, as you put it, which I love. I want to get into that too, different and unique for people who are child-free versus us just kind of going with the masses and a more traditional approach.
Let's start with the standard life script. The standard life script says you go to college, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, you build wealth, you retire, and then when you die, you pass that wealth on. Let's go back to one of the very first steps, have kids. That plan is not in there anymore, especially if you're child free. You're taking that out. And so now your goals have changed. And you have to really think of, what do you want your life to look like? What do you want to do? I know many people, many parents who you can have a conversation with them, but they don't necessarily know what they truly want out of their life, because at a certain point when they hit retirement, I know many people today who are now having grandkids, and they're saying, "I'm retiring so I can take care of the grandkids." They're shifting all their goals onto their children or their grandkids, things like that. As child free people, we don't have that option. We have to figure out what it is for ourselves that we want and what we want out of life, which is why we emphasize life planning so much. I've had conversations with multiple clients and they say, I don't know what my purpose is. What is my purpose? How do I find that? How do I work on it? And it's an ever evolving thing to figure out what your purpose is and then go through and really live that out. But the point is, being child free, you're forced to figure that out. Otherwise, you're stuck in this kind of limbo crisis situation where you don't know what's going on. And that can be really, really difficult.
Yeah, I feel like everything you said hits home for me, and it's almost been a surprise to me when I don't know exactly what age this started happening. I've been very vocal that I've known since my early 20s that I wanted to be child free. But then you still are just kind of going through the motions of life with your friends and starting your early career, expanding in your career. You still have a vibrant social life, and then people kind of start to go off in their nuclear families as they start having kids, and there's fewer and fewer of you left doing the things that you used to do, or figuring out really what you want to do next, not just professionally but personally. And I'm a driven person. I know so many people listening consider themselves to be driven people, but you sort of have this pause where you look around and it's like, what am I building this life for? From the financial standpoint, what am I saving for? Especially if it's like you've purchased a house, if that was a goal of yours, maybe you paid for a wedding, and then it's like, there's a lot of life ahead. I want to be comfortable. I want to have fun. I could paint some broad strokes of what happiness might look like financially, but tactically, like, what am I really doing and what is going to bring me joy for the next 50 years, hopefully? So when you say life planning, like, what are you actually doing with clients to help us figure this out?
Mainly, the first thing is just making clients aware of it. I was reading through an intake before I got on this, and I'm reading through it and I'm going, okay, yeah, I can see where you're going, but there's a whole lot of red flags here in the sense of you missed your life and you're going to keep missing it if you don't shift things because the whole idea that many people have when they come to us and they talk about finances, how can I spend the most money? How can I save the most money? Make sure I don't die with nothing and that I have something. I'm not going to run out of money. But then how can I lower taxes? And it's kind of all these questions. And when I go through and I read that, I'm like, that's nice. It might be good to live in a place with lower taxes or to put more money away, but are you actually enjoying things along the way?
Mhm.
And so just making people aware of that and realizing you don't have to save every single penny that comes across through your life. One of the simplest things is my wife and I were having a conversation about this. We have a house cleaner. We had a house cleaner for a long time, ended up didn't work out and we parted ways with them. We just got a new one here. And we were talking about it and talking about the cost that we pay for it. And I said, well, if you think about there's two of them that come, they spend this much time here, we're really paying this much an hour, and then you and I can go work and do the things that we enjoy and we're making this much. So it works out for us. It makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
And then we're not having to spend our extra time together. My wife's an airline pilot. She travels all the time. So we have limited time together to start. How can we figure out ways so we have that time together and we can maximize it? For us, that's getting a house
Mhm.
cleaner. So we're not spending that time cleaning the house together. And it's just little things like that, which people often don't think of, that can make really, really big difference for clients of just saying, yes, you can pay for that. Yes, you can do this because it allows you the time and the flexibility to go do those other things that are more important to you and that you really enjoy.
I love the permission. I feel like sometimes that's the thing that's needed. It's the ideas. And this sounds almost silly because if I've never had a problem spending money. So, like, I could come up with 100 things right now that I could spend money on, and that sounds fun. But realistically, I don't do that, right? It feels a little self indulgent. Maybe it feels irresponsible. Or maybe when there's lack of visibility to our financial future, it feels like I shouldn't buy that. I don't really know why. I just feel like I should be saving that money. We're kind of making all these assumptions. And to me, one of the most beautiful things about being child free is that it does afford us more time and space to think creatively about our funds. Having kids is expensive. And not that that's why I'm not having them, but that is a reality.
Yeah.
And, like, I have that financial flexibility to spend the money on something other than school supplies and food and education and all of those things. But then when it comes down to, okay, what does that look like? Yeah, making it aligned with the lifestyle I want. We have a house cleaner too. It took me years to be okay spending money on that because I just felt like I'm capable of cleaning this house. I should be the one to do it. But it was the same thing. Like, we all have busy lives. My husband and I work long hours, and then we're spending, 2 nights a week that we could be doing stuff together, cleaning the house separately to try to like tackle this thing. And we spent money on this house and now we're spending our time taking care of it. It feels silly, but I think having somebody who we trust and has our financial best interest at heart look at our life and say, okay, actually, it is okay for you to pay somebody to clean your house or to do some other task for you or to get groceries delivered or, whatever it is to help us align our day-to-day experience with this life that we want.
Yeah, and pointing those things out and just having that conversation of how we can align that, because as humans, we do a great job of saying, well, we shouldn't spend money on that. We should save for this. We should do this. And don't get me wrong, there are ways to save money, to do things, and that's great. But figuring out what that's for, frankly, the amount of money that I spend on a house cleaner every other week, I don't really care about. Even if I were to invest that, that's nice. It's really not going to make a lot of difference to me in the future. It's figuring out where can we spend that money now and how can we use that to make us live a more fulfilled, more rich life and just something that we enjoy. Because you're right, like there are so many things that we can tangle ourselves up in and commit to and do, but you need somebody to call you out on that and just say, hey, this is what things look like. Or another big thing is telling our clients, we'll see many people who are saving, 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 saving because we've been taught to save and taught you need to save, which is fantastic. I absolutely agree that there is a point where you need to save and hit financial independence and get through all those things. But there can also be a point when you're starting to save too much, where the money that you've saved is now going towards an estate that you don't really care about, especially if you're looking to die with zero and utilize a lot of the money that you have. Die with Zero is a book by Bill Perkins. In the book, he talks about you have time, money, and health, and how can you utilize those things. We say you have time, money, and freedom. How can you utilize those things throughout your life? You're going to have different amounts at different points in time. And figuring out where you can best spend all of those when you've hit those different points is really, really important.
Okay, I want to dive into the tactics of that because die with zero, I've heard people say that. I don't really understand what that means. Can you explain it?
Absolutely. So dying with zero is saying, hey, we're not going to build this large amount of generational wealth. Instead, we're going to utilize our time, our money, and then our freedom or health, whatever you decide to say, at certain points in your time. There's going to be a point in life where you have a lot more time, but you might not have as much money. There's going to be other points in life where you have a lot more money, but you might not have as much time. And then you might have a lot more freedom and health, but you're not necessarily going to have a lot of time or money at those points. So, what stage are you in? How can we utilize the stage that you're in to either help you get more time if you need more time? Help you, like, that's if you have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of time. Okay, we're going to use some of that money to get you more time, just like the house cleaner that you and I both have, and really improves our lives. Do you have a lot of time, but you don't have a lot of money? Okay, how can we help you utilize that time to maybe if giving back is something that's really important to you? Are there causes you can give back to, whether that be spending your time volunteering, or maybe you haven't quite hit the point yet where you're at financial independence and we need to use some of that time to then get a little bit more money so you can even things out a little bit. So it's just figuring out what stage you're in and what you have a lot of and what you don't have a lot of, and figuring out how we can balance that throughout your life.
That sounds fun. That sounds
It
like a
is
much
fun.
more fun approach than just like put away this percent every paycheck or, try to hit these savings thresholds. That's always been the most boring rhetoric in the world to me, like just siphoning, kind of squirreling money away every month. But this sounds so much more dynamic and holistic.
Yeah, and it's a lot more fun too to know, hey, these are the things that you want to do and these are the things that you want to go for. And if you're saving, just going, oh, I'm saving for retirement, that's great. But also, how many child-free people truly want to retire? That's another thing
Mm.
to consider. is, do you really want to retire? Do you want to retire fully? Do you want to dial back on work? What does that look like for you? Maybe you don't retire at a typical retirement age. Maybe you decide to just cut back. I've seen many clients who will cut back to three-quarters time, part-time, quarter time, different things like that, and just kind of phase it out. We have somebody else who works for beer, bowling, and benefits. That's
Love that.
yeah. So that's just what they enjoy. So how can we have a conversation with you? We do have conversations with clients all the time of what do you envision that to look like? Because there's many times where I'll get a client, they'll say, oh, yeah, I could retire, but I'll be incredibly bored. So I don't think I'm going to.
hmm Yeah, I have mixed feelings about retirement too. To be honest, I just got back from a long vacation. Bri, you and I have talked about this. And after that vacation, I was like, maybe I do want to retire. This not working is a little bit more fun than I remember. But I love it when people use the phrase work optional, like getting to a place in life where you don't have to work to have income to fund your life, but you have the health and mental capacity and creativity that you can dip in and out of work if you want to. That feels a lot more exciting to me than just working towards some magical age where I'm going to step away from the workforce altogether. And then it's like, well, what else am I going to do with all of my time? So that gets tricky. But we talked a little bit about how we're planning for our life, and there's more to discuss there. But this end of life period or near end of life period, I think is important for us to talk about too. Both of us as child-free people and people listening, we get the question all the time, who's going to take care of you when you're old? Who's going to help you like before you die? If you don't have kids, who's going to step in and fill this role? And we get annoyed or roll our eyes at that question. But in this phase of life that I'm in now, I've been watching my parents do a lot to caretake for their parents and support them logistically, tactically, financially, just helping them kind of usher through those end of life years and then ultimately passing away. There is a lot that has to happen in that era. I hope that era is very far away for me, but eventually, I'm going to need something, right, to help me. Where am I going to live? How am I going to take care of things? What if I'm not capable of making decisions the way that I want to? And this whole topic is so ick. Like, we don't like to think about it. It's scary for a lot of reasons. And it's certainly not a reason to have children. To just
Yeah.
assume that, like, oh, I'll have a baby because they'll take care of me. Like, absolutely not. And when I get those questions, I often come back with, like, I'll have money to take care of me. My money is going to be the one that does the work. But okay, like, then I have to have the money to back that up. So this end of life stuff, like, how do you work with clients on this? And does this topic and kind of this framing that we're used to as child-free people, does that come up in your work?
It comes up all the time. And one of my favorite things is part of the census data. It asked, in child-free people, they call it childless in there. There's a difference between child-free and childless, and we won't get into all that, but they use the word childless. And they found that 1.5% of parents say they have financial help from family, whereas 2.5% of non-parents said that they had financial help. So I think that just proves right there, having a child is not automatically going to make sure that you're taken care of financially or otherwise.
hmm
Because think about the amount of estrangement too. So I don't love that question either. I think it's kind of an ignorant question to ask. And you're right, using your money to take care of you is going to be one of the easiest ways to go about it, but you will have to have that money and we'll have to have a plan for that. Whenever we're working on a plan for clients, we always include long term care, whatever that plan may be. There are multiple options for long term care. You can do long term care insurance. Now you have to make sure you're picking a policy that is going to have some inflation coverage on there. It's going to be enough coverage as well. I've had people say, well, it doesn't really pay that much. That's right. It doesn't pay that much if you pick the wrong policy. So
hmm
making sure you're picking a policy that's going to cover your needs is incredibly important. And long-term care right now in 2025, the average cost in the US is $127,000 a year. That's a
Wow.
lot.
It's a lot.
Yes. Women will use 3.7 years on average and men 2.2 years on average. So having a plan to pay for that is incredibly important, whether or not you choose that insurance. People also choose to self-fund, so paying out of pocket for it instead. And when you're doing that, we're setting aside a specific amount of money and we're saying, this is your long-term care fund. You are not touching this for anything else other than long-term care because it is so incredibly important to have that set aside and have that protected for long-term care. So you've got those options. As of right now, you have Medicaid as well. If you're in a financial situation where you don't have enough money to purchase long-term care insurance or pay for it out of pocket, Medicaid, you can go on that. It's government funded, but it does require you to spend down your assets to basically nothing. And so that has been also a hot topic recently of whether or not that gets cut. I don't know. As of recording this, we're still okay. Um, but that's something to just watch out for. And then there's also the opt-out option as well. But that is only available in certain states. And it's honestly really hard to even pursue that option if that's something that you're interested in, because there are so many different legalities surrounding it and saying what kind of condition that you have to be in as well.
What's the opt-out option?
So the opt-out option would be like death with dignity. So euthanasia, something like that. If you're going through any sort of decline, and usually they're saying you have to be terminal, it has to be a certain disease, you can't have cognitive decline, you have to sign off of it. There are many people who will want that option, ask for that, but
Mhm.
the reality of accessing it is it's incredibly tough, and it's something that we can't necessarily plan for as easily.
Oh my gosh, this conversation is so heavy. I mean, I brought it up, but but it's emotional. I mean, money is such a tactical thing, and it's like just one layer beneath the tactics. I feel like it hits so many emotions for so many reasons when we're talking about finances. But everything you just said, like I've never heard of long-term care insurance. I feel like having a long-term care account, we talk about retirement accounts all the time culturally, but I have never heard these terms before.
Yeah, and it's something that we don't really think about. We live in a death denying society. And
Mhm.
so, of course, you haven't heard of it. Most people haven't because they don't want to have these conversations or go through these things. Many people do not have any sort of estate plan in place in the United States. I did a podcast interview with a death expert about a year
Mm.
ago. And one of the things that she talked about was think about how removed death has become from our households. It used to be people would die at home many times. Now, a lot of people are dying in hospitals or nursing homes or all of these different things. You don't see that anymore, and you're not seeing it close. There are many people who have never been to a funeral in their life or have not been to a funeral in their life until way later. And so, if you're not part of that and you're not seeing that and you don't see that caregiving process too, you might not think of it or might not know that is something you need to plan for or even how to plan for it.
That's why we need support from
Mhm.
professionals like you because, yeah, it makes so much sense. And I'm very interested, as much as I can sort of tolerate my own interest in it, in this end of life era, because I don't want to wind up there. Maybe it's just the planner in me and I don't know what, the realist, but I don't want to end up at a phase of life and be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Or I haven't thought this through. And of course, life is unpredictable. Like anything can happen at any time, but there are products and solutions and support available that we can tap into. And why not do it proactively? It gives me peace of mind. Like, I'm going to be talking to you about long term care insurance after this conversation because why wouldn't I do that? We have insurance on our bicycle because it has a motor on it. Like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't we do something like this for something as important as, the last years of our life?
Yeah, absolutely. Just having those conversations. And when we work with clients, so we don't sell any products, but we refer to companies who do sell products and will sell long term care insurance. And we'll go over that with clients and say, hey, this is what it looks like. This is what the quote covers. And those policies, they're expensive, frankly. The US does not do a great job of taking care of its elderly. And so policies are going to be expensive, but also I think the mental peace of mind from not planning is probably more expensive than any sort of policy or setting money aside is.
What other things besides end of life or long-term care, what other things should child-free people be thinking about financially that we may not be aware of or might not be kind of part of the traditional financial planning conversations?
Yeah. Big thing that I will often have with clients, and it happens a lot, particularly single women, I find. Single women will come to us and they'll say, I want to buy a house, or I have this money saved to buy a house. And I say, okay, why do you want to buy a house? Well, because my parents said I needed to. If I had a dollar for every single time that I had a single woman come to me and said, because my parents said I needed to, and it usually involves buying a house, I would have a lot of dollars and I would probably not be sitting here talking to you today. I would be out on
Wow.
somewhere. So,
I would love that for you.
I mean, I would love that for me too. But having that conversation of, do you really need to buy a house or is renting
Mm,
okay? That's a big thing too, because flexibility when it comes to child-free life is so incredibly important. And renting allows you flexibility. If you want to pick up and move, you can pick up and move. But if you were buying a house, now you've got the house, you need to figure out everything that involves it to get it up for listing, to be able to move. There are a lot more strings attached. So it's figuring out, what does your life look like? If you're going to be somewhere for 5 to 7 years and you want the work associated with buying a house and you want to deal with all that, that's another conversation. But if you're somebody who's much more of a digital nomad or just wants to travel and do all these things and you've bounced around a lot, buying a house probably isn't going to be the right option for you, just because there's so much that goes into it. And people like to say, well, it's an investment. Have you ever actually done the math of buying a primary residence? Many times you're breaking even, if not losing a little bit of money by the time you factor in maintenance and property taxes and
mhm.
insurance, all these other things. It's not necessarily an investment like it was if you bought your house 30 years ago and are still living in today and experience that high rate of growth.
Mhm.
So that's such a big, big conversation, is that buying versus renting.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's just one other example of sort of that traditional, what you said at the beginning, like there's this storyline that is so ubiquitous of go to college, find a partner, buy a house, get a puppy, have a baby, like we're so used to seeing this one path. And what inspires me about child-free wealth and the focus that you have on this specific lifestyle is how you're helping us break past that story. It's not that every single person who goes down that path has sat down and thought, okay, wow, yes, I do want to go to college. Wow, yes, I did find my love of my life in a college class. It's not always conscious. It's just so ubiquitous and so normalized. So I think just having the pause of encouraging us to stop and think, okay, this big financial milestone that we think is a necessary achievement, is it? Like for what and for who? And is there a different way I could be spending money or living my life that actually is in service to what I want?
Yeah, and that's important too. That what you said is in service to what I want, and recognizing whose voice is in your head when you're trying to make these financial decisions, and just make these life decisions as well. As who's saying that you have to do this or you have to do that? Is it something that you truly want? Is it something that somebody else wants for you? And learning to take that time and sit and hear yourself, but not only hear yourself, trust yourself enough to follow what you can hear and what you really want deep down and what those desires are. Because we can hear what we want all day, but if we're not trusting ourselves enough to follow that path and instead we're ignoring that and pushing it away, we're not doing a lot for ourselves other than ignoring what we're wanting.
Can you give me some examples of breakthroughs or transformative moments that you've seen with clients when they are able to kind of have that aha moment and dial into what they actually want? What types of choices or creativity have you seen people express with their money?
There have been a lot of different things. One of the ones that is out there on our podcast is Andy and Libby. So Andy and Libby had all these different ideas for what they were going to do. They were going to fire, they were probably going to wait a few years, financial independence, retire early when I say fire. And they're thinking, oh, it's a few years out. Well, they actually live in France now and they love their life and they're doing things out there that they didn't think was possible to do so soon. Many times it is realizing that it's a lot easier to do these things sooner than you think because people already have an idea. If they've reached a point where they kind of know what they want, then they've listened to themselves for a while. And it takes a while to have any of these conversations. We always say when we work with clients, it takes about 6 months before they actually pull the trigger on doing what they want. But having the conversation took a while. And then they said, okay, now we feel comfortable, we can do it. And many times it's working with the client on the things that they say they want to do. And instead of having them wait a few years, we're getting them to do that a lot sooner because there are so many things that we as humans want to do, but we always say, oh, I can't do that yet. I can't do that yet. And that yet really gets in the way. It's taking that yet out.
Okay, you said fire and you said what it means. Can you say that again?
Yeah, fire, financial independence, retire early. So the fire movement is really big into, hey, we're going to work really, really hard for a few years. We're going to reach financial independence, and then we're going to just cut out of work completely. We're going to fire. We're going to retire early. That's great. We talk about fire. We like to say file, financial independence, live early.
Mhm.
Because so many times when we're having these conversations, like I said earlier, is clients aren't necessarily wanting to retire or wanting to retire fully. They're wanting to do something else or cut back or just change up how their current work situation is. So we say financial independence, live early is, can we switch careers now? Maybe you're working in a career like the beer benefits and bowling one, where it just brings you a lot of joy. Not really bringing in a ton of money, but that's okay because you don't need to. You've hit financial independence already. And so you can make different choices. You can just bring in enough to cover your expenses or bring in enough to cover your beer, your bowling, and your benefits.
Mhm.
One of my favorite ones we'll do with clients is adjusting their work schedule for clients and cutting it back. I can think of a couple scenarios in which we've got clients down to work 3 or 4 days a week. We've got other clients who will work 2 weeks on, 1 week off, or 6 weeks on and 4 weeks off, different things like that. How can we work with your employer? And we're not working directly with your employer, but we're working with our client to then work with the employer and figure out a solution that works for them. Because many employers, if you ask them for a flexible work arrangement, they'll do it. It might take a little bit, but they'll probably do it because if they can have you at least for part of the time versus none of the time, they're usually willing to accept that. And think about it, it's really not costing them any more money to give you time off. And you can say, hey, I'll take the time off. I don't need to be paid for that time. I'll take unpaid time off and I'll just adjust my schedule and we'll adjust the pay for whatever those hours might look like now. And then you go and you live your life on those times where you're not working. And it works for a lot more professions than people often think. Many times they'll say, oh, I do this or that, and it doesn't work. Well, there's probably somebody else who can cover your role or somebody else can be trained into because if you were to leave completely, they'd have to train somebody else new anyway.
Right.
They can start training somebody and start getting somebody to come in there and fill in for you.
This is the creative thinking the world needs, honestly. Like, okay, I'm thinking of this scene. Have you ever seen the movie 9 to 5?
I have a long time ago, so I don't really remember it well.
Okay. Well, this is my PSA. Everybody listening, watch 9 to 5. I'm obsessed with Dolly Parton and she's great and everything, but it's one of her greats. Anyway, there's this scene where, of course, this is all kind of happening in, I don't even remember if it's the late 70s or 80s, but men kind of rule the workforce and then they have these shenanigans. They get the boss out and these women take over and they introduce all of these creative programs like in office daycare and hybrid schedules because one woman wants to work 9 to noon and somebody else wants to work noon to whatever. They just listen to human nature essentially and then build the workplace around that versus forcing people to conform to traditional workplace standards. And profitability is up, productivity is up. And yes, I know this is a movie, but there have been other real life examples of companies doing that. And I think it's becoming more popular. And this feels like a way that we're almost taking that approach, but at a personal level and deciding not what's best for we're not coming at this from a CEO perspective, but as an individual, like what is going to best serve my life? And then how can I bring that into my career, whether I work for a company or I'm an entrepreneur or whatever, in a way that is still in benefit to that. Like it's not about taking advantage, but it's just about thinking differently and outside the box of what we're used to. And ultimately, it can be better for everybody.
Absolutely. It's so important to figure out what works for you. And it can be kind of hard too to think about that. I do this all day for clients and work with a lot of clients on different things. I recently had a revelation of I get so angsty in the afternoon. Why the hell am I working in a meeting in the afternoon? That is
Right.
so dumb. I
Yeah.
don't like being inside in the afternoon. And so figured out, okay, Mondays afternoons, I'll do meetings. And that's my one day a week where I will do client meetings in the afternoons. Otherwise, I'm doing meetings in the morning. They're gonna be in the morning, and then by 12:30 my time, I am done with meetings. My afternoon is all flexible and planning focused, and then if I wanna go sit outside with my computer and work outside, I do. If I wanna go sit at the library and work, I'll do that. It's figuring out what works for you, and that doesn't cost anything extra to the company. Doesn't
Mhm.
really change much. It's just how I like to set my meeting because I also am the person who can get up and just start working right away. And so figuring that out and going through that with clients, the same way we figure it out with ourselves, trial and error. I took for a while. And at the beginning of the year, I was like, you know what? I really want to have all my meetings in the afternoon. And then the mornings, I can take time for myself because I like to work later. And then I did it for a few months and went, this sucks. I
Yeah.
don't like this.
Hmm.
And so I'm changing it. And that's okay. We do the same thing with clients. We'll try something and we'll check in a few months later and say, "Hey, is this still working for you? Is it not working? What's working? What it's not working? And then what do we need to do differently?" And then we'll adjust. And so that's just one of the things that we'll do with them. Those three questions can be so impactful and really allow them to make different choices in their life.
I love the ongoing flexibility with the financial security because that is the thing that sort of allows it, right? Allows us to say, yes, I'll take unpaid time off, or I'll work fewer hours, even if that means I make less money, or, setting a seasonal schedule because we're somebody who loves to travel all summer or whatever that looks like individually. And to your point, it changes over time. It's amazing how answering the question, like, what do we want? If somebody asks me, like, in depth, what do I want for my life? That's a very hard question to answer, even though it's like that should be, seemingly that should be so simple. Like it's me, it's my life, it's my brain. I should be able to say, but it is trial and error to figure out what's right for us. And then also that evolves as we evolve and we age and people come and go within our life and all the things. So I love the combination of thinking really flexibly, but also having the support and financial security through the systems and certified financial support that people are getting with child free wealth, because that's ultimately the thing that creates that space for us to be creative.
Absolutely, because if you're in the stage of life where it's really rent and ramen, you're just trying to get by and pay your bills, it's really hard to think about anything and do anything that allows for flexibility. You've got to get a solid financial footing underneath you before you can go and make these choices and do these things and also do them in a way which you feel comfortable. We'll have clients, and I see it all the time, clients with millions of dollars in the bank, and they'll still act like they're living on rent and ramen. And still act like they're trying to get by every month. And I had somebody one time, I will never forget this conversation. I met with this individual and eight-figure net worth, and they go, "Yeah, I still buy the green meat from the grocery store when it's on sale." What are you doing? I mean, I appreciate the the ability to do that got you there. You don't need to do that anymore. It is A-okay to buy the full price meat, and you're not gonna be broke. You'll be totally fine.
Right.
But we'll see that with clients. They live in this idea that they can't spend money, they can't do these things. And so, one of the best ways we do that is we'll give them spending goals. When we work with clients and we're working with a die with zero approach, we'll often do guardrails. So, what's the minimum amount of money you need to spend? And what's the most amount of money you need to spend? I should also be sure to say that doing any sort of die with zero or winding down your wealth over time, you absolutely have to use ongoing financial support for that. You cannot do this on your own or DIY this and do like any sort of one-time plan because there are too many factors where, things can change. So we want to make sure that we're getting professional support, we're doing it on an ongoing basis, and we're really checking in with different things. But part of that is those large spending goals, those guardrails, those minimums and maximums. Other things are I've got another meeting happening today, and I already have on my homework for them. I've written out how much money I need them to spend before I see them next time. And it's not a large amount by any sort of means. It's a few $1,000s, but it's not in the realm of their finances. It's not a lot, but it's something that I need them to spend from the stance of I need them to start feeling comfortable with what they have and
Mm.
comfortable with their money. And so sometimes I'll give those goals to clients. I'll pick a number and I'll say, I need you to spend this much by the time I see you next time. Many of our clients, when we're with them for the first year, we see them every month. So these people have a month to spend this amount. And now, if they don't spend it, they're not going to be in trouble or anything like that. But it's just, I need them to practice the art of spending money and feel comfortable with that. Because, like anything, if you don't practice it, it's going to be a little bit hard.
That is the most fun homework assignment I have ever heard, ever.
Mhm. I know. Isn't it a fun one?
Yes, yeah. I don't think I have your clients' problems of not spending. But if somebody said to me, like, you had to spend this amount in a month, oh my gosh, my wheels would be turning in the most fun ways. I love that.
Yeah, and it even just the idea of, oh, these are the things that I could spend it on can be so helpful because sometimes it's we have no idea what we could spend it on and we just go, No, everything's fine, it's good." Well, come on, there's got to be something that you can do, whether it's something you want to go to, something you want to purchase, just anything that you can spend money on and enjoy, have a good time, and that's okay. It's okay to do those things, but when we're still buying the green meat at the grocery store, that's when we need to start practicing how to spend money, especially if we're living with eight-figure net worth as well.
Definitely. Okay, I want to talk about the idea of legacy. We are not in a position where we are having actual literal children as our legacy, but I still think legacy and kind of leaving something behind or having an impact that does have a ripple effect after our time here on this planet, I think that's important to a lot of child-free people. That's something that is important to me. So we've been kind of talking about this idea of die with zero, so we're fully enjoying and utilizing our money while we're alive. How do you think about legacy with clients? Like, the things that come to mind to me are donating money and maybe having your name on the wing of a hospital or, something much smaller scale than that, like giving money to a family member's child in a specific way or giving money just to a charity that you really enjoy, giving money to a sports team. Like, there's no right or wrong recipient of this, but how does this conversation of giving something, to something else come up in your planning with clients?
I think a lot of people have ideas of who they want to give to, whether that be through their time or their money.
Mhm.
They just might not know how to execute that or think that they have to wait until the end to do that. So when I'm having this conversation with clients, I will often ask them about whether they have plans to give anything to a person or a charity or something like that. There are usually two buckets that people will fall into. One, they want to help nieces and nephews or friends' children, and so kind of individuals. Or two, they want to help charities. Both of these things, I'm often going to encourage that you help them while you're still alive. One, when we're talking about nieces and nephews, many times nieces and nephews, they might be 25 to 35 years younger than you. And so think about it. If you're dying and you're 80 and they're, let's just say 20, 25 years younger than you. So they're in their 50s, early 60s. If you're dying and passing money to them at that point in time, they've probably already built a nest egg for themselves and are doing pretty good. They don't necessarily need that money anymore, and it's not going to allow them to do as much as if you were to help them when they're younger in life. So Bill Perkins in that book, Die with Zero, he says, I want to say it's 25 to 36. I can't remember the exact age, but it's late 20s to early 30s is the most impactful time for somebody to receive money. And if you
Mm,
think about your own life, that probably makes a big impact at that point in life because you're coming out of
definitely.
college and maybe you don't have student loans. And if you don't, fantastic. So you can use that money to get any sort of extra start. If you've got student loans, you can take and pay those student loans off using some of that money. It just allows you to build a nice solid foundation to start your life off of. Whereas 50s and 60s, it might be a nice little trip or something, but it's not allowing you that little jump start in life that you might need.
Right.
And so gifting to them at that point can be super helpful, helping through college, helping, if you've got somebody who has a fund that they say, get the babies to love me, and they're putting money away for their nieces and nephews. And it's really putting money away and saying, this is for something, whether it be they want to study abroad, they want to do this trip, they decide to get married, they decide to buy a house, they decide to do whatever. It's
Mm,
really up to them of what that's for. But that's kind of one way that we'll work with clients who are trying to gift money to somebody. Whenever you're trying to gift money, I always recommend getting professional help because there are some limitations around gifting and tax implications. It can be pretty simple. In 2025, the annual exclusion limit, which is the amount of money that one individual can give to another individual, is $19,000, and you can do that without worrying about taxes. You can get around this and give more depending on how you do it, but you
mhm,
have to be very careful about it. So I always say, you know what? That's just best reserved for a one-on-one conversation because there's a lot more to that.
mhm,
Now, when it comes to charities, if you're looking to give to charities and you really want to be a part of that, let's give throughout your life. There's a couple reasons for that. One, you can see the impact that you're making.
mm.
When you're dead, you're not gonna see that impact, and that can be really sad. Another
Yes.
thing is tax deductions. It can be really tax friendly for you to give throughout your life. There are times in which, when you're about in your 70s, you can do what's called qualified charitable distribution. And that can really help with some of the retirement accounts. I'll see many people with seven-figure retirement accounts, and they're all tax deferred accounts, meaning they never paid income tax on that when they put the money in. Well, when you get in your 70s, depending on your birth year, you're going to have what's called required minimum distributions, meaning the
Mm,
government says you have to take that money out and pay the taxes on it now. And that could be a lot. There's can
mhm.
be easily half a million, $2 million tax bills, depending on,
Ugh.
yeah, is right, depending on how large those accounts are. And so if we can do some of these things like the QCD and giving money from those accounts to charities, that can be super helpful to lower your tax bill, also give the things that you want to give to, and then see the impact of that as well. So there are a lot of different options on how you do it. It's just what does that look like? We'll see people who have stock from a company, they'll get RSUs or anything like that. And they have all this individual stock that they want to sell. Well, they've got a ton of gain on it. Let's donate some of that to something like a donor advised fund. That could be an option as well. But it's based off your income and there's percentage. So we have to go through and really work one on one with clients to figure out what that best option is for them. But there's usually ways in which we can do these things, make it super tax efficient, allow you to give to who you want to give to. And another weird one is you can donate property too.
Mm,
That can be
I
that's
didn't know that.
yeah, a lot of people don't. It's tricky. It's something that you absolutely need professional help with, but it can be done. And so there are different options whether or not you want to give and do those things. Other things I've seen too for people legacy is just somebody said they wanted to have the best garden in the neighborhood. That's a
Mm,
perfectly fine, valid goal as well. Is
that's
that
great.
important to you? There's a park that's nearby I love going to, and there's benches about different people, and in it says, person's name, when they were born, when they died, and something about them. Like they loved walking this park with their dog, or they loved walking this park or sitting here and watching things. So, what are those little legacy things? It doesn't have to be something large and grand. It can be smaller too and more localized as well.
Everything you just said is so helpful to me. I feel like we don't think about this stuff in all of the fun ways that we could.
Mhm.
And yes, like I don't want to defer. I don't want to be saving money or holding on to money my whole life and then have something in my will where once I'm dead, it goes to some thing or multiple things or people. I want to selfishly enjoy the gift of that while I'm here. And as you said, see the impact, see what happens. And I also love the idea of, even if we're in a position where we only have a little bit of money to give, like we don't have to be buying a wing of a
Mhm.
hospital. We can buy a park bench or,
Mhm.
gift money in that way and breaking down those little moments of impact. And maybe it's just your favorite corner, your favorite park, your favorite store, your favorite small business, whatever. Like there's so many ways we can have an impact and influence on the world and the things that have brought us joy through our life. And I love thinking about the future and our finances in this way. It's so much more fun,
Yeah.
to think about like, what am I going to do with this money? And what am I working toward? Like, back to that question, like, yes, I want to do the things I want to do and have the time and financial freedom to do that. But how cool would it be for me to donate money and have a bench in the park where my husband proposed? Or, like there's so many little things that I don't think we always think about, but it can get really exciting.
Yeah, and it's so fun. I think the word legacy, I've never really loved the word because I think it can be so heavy
Mhm.
and it can feel really monumentous and make it sometimes difficult to think about what you want that to look like. But
Yes.
it also can be part of my journey as I work with clients. My own personal journey has been redefining legacy to not always be something super large and kind of that big idea. It can be the small things too, because those are really important as well.
I love that. Ah, okay, that's a perfect segue into my final question for you. You know that this podcast is about finding fulfillment on our own terms, looking beyond societal expectations, taking time to get curious, get to know ourselves, and build a life that feels really personally fulfilling. So, for you, tell me what makes a fulfilling, happy life in your eyes?
One of my biggest things is I love being outdoors. I am a very active person, have always been very active, and I like to be outside. I'm doing a couple different challenges right now that are outside and just hiking challenges of hiking different parks, kind of completing the entire thing and then learning about them as well. So for me, having an active life is not only incredibly important, but also taking and learning things along the way. Part of the reason that the challenge I'm doing right now I love is because every hike that I go on, then there's also information about it. I'm in a women's hiking group as well. And
Hmm,
one of the people who often will lead the hikes works for a national park. And so we'll go out and she's like, "Hey, did you know this involves this or this is happening?" and all these different things. So for me, having a rich and fulfilled life is being active, continuing to learn, and then just trying new things as well. I love trying new things. I don't have to be good at them. I can suck at them, but at least I'm trying and just going out and having fun.
beautiful answer. Thank you so much for coming. I continually learn from you. Speaking of learning new things, I learn from you every time we talk, and I know that the listeners have learned a lot from all of your insights here as well. For everybody who would like to get to know you better, learn more from you, and learn more about child free wealth, tell the people what you have going on and where they can connect with you.
Absolutely. So the easiest way to find us is just search Childfree Wealth. Our website is childfreewealth.com. We are on the different socials at Childfree Wealth. We have a podcast, which I co-host along with Dr. J, our founder. It's called Childfree Wealth. And if you want to meet with us, the first way to do it is by booking a Childfree Wealth checkup. This is a paid meeting where we ask you to send in some information. We go through it and we kind of give you a breakdown of what we see of both your life and financial plan and then give you some feedback on it. And we help you with some next steps of where to go, whether that be one on one planning with us or doing more DIY planning, and just give you a direction of where to start. So, those are going to be the best ways to find us, just searching Child Free Wealth.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming, Bri. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Now I want to hear what you learned. DM me on Instagram at Curious Life of a Child-Free Woman or leave a review with your top takeaway. These ratings really do make a difference. If you're not a member of the Curious Life Club yet, you are invited. Visit CuriousLifeOfAChildFreeWoman.com to join the conversation, share suggestions, and be first to know the next curious topic. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.